Hello, my name is Henry. Tonight's story is going to be about the love of a mother for her child. There was an old house that was out near where I used to live, and not everybody knew the story, but I learned about the story firsthand, and it was quite the spooky one. This old house was a two-story old house built back in the 1830s. There was a man and woman that lived there, a real young man and woman, just starting out, working on a family, and the husband was working the fields, and the wife was big as a barrel with a baby. Well, there was lots of long hours in that field with a horse and plow, but it was a good life for them. And the wife spent her days cleaning and donning socks and things that women did back in those days. And while she was donning the socks or cleaning, she'd be singing to the baby that she was carrying, looking forward to a nice, healthy baby and maybe another one after that. But she was preparing things for the baby, and the husband was trying to put food on the table. They both pulling their weight, doing what they do best, taking care of the land, taking care of the house, and taking care of each other. Well, days had passed, and she sent word with one of the slaves out that the baby was coming. Her water had broke. So the house slave went out to fetch the husband and let him know that he's getting ready to be a papa. So husband comes back, him and the slave takes the horses out and tends to them so the father can get in and see if maybe there's something he could do. She told him that it wouldn't be long and that baby would be in the world, so he should be getting some water and towels and stuff ready. And so he promptly got right on the job and started fetching towels and water, and then he told the slave to go fetch a wet nurse, which was on down the road a couple mile, and have her show up to help deliver the baby. He hadn't never delivered a baby, so it was all new to him and her. They needed some help. Back in those days, there wasn't doctors very close, so you had a lot of wet nurses in all these communities. So she went and got one of the wet nurses, which was a nanny slave that would help with the delivery of the baby. So while he's getting towels and stuff ready, he's a fretting and he's a pacing like all fathers do before their children are born, and trying to think of what life's going to be like with a little one in the house. It's going to be a joyous occasion. But he don't know that yet. He's just hoping and praying. Everything turns out fine. So in the meantime, while he's getting stuff ready and pacing the floors and wondering if his wife's going to make it, the baby's going to make it, the wet nurse shows up. And she's proceeded to tell him to get the towels and stuff ready, and he said, my wife done told me all that, and it's all waiting. All you have to do is go and help bring this baby into the world. So him and the slave go out on the porch, and they're talking and smoking their pipe. And the old slave was telling the master that everything be okay. This lady has delivered more babies than Carter could shake pills at it. So You just need to chill out and wait, and everything will be good. But he's still worried because back in those days, the infant death rate was really high, and the women sometimes lost themselves in childbirth. Would have made the man a widow. So all these things are running through his head. But the wet nurse come through. The mama come through. She had a nice little baby girl. Cutest thing you ever seen. She hollered for the husband to come in and meet his daughter. She cleaned the baby all up and tended to her, and passed her off to the father and said, "Meet your daughter." They named the daughter Elizabeth. Why, he was just as proud if it had been a baby boy. He didn't care. As long as it was good and healthy, the wife was healthy, he was a happy man. Now he had himself a family. Going to make him work even harder. But you know how fathers are with daughters. He was going to spoil her as much as he could. Thinking about all the little dresses he'd be buying her, and the little fancy hats and ponies, and whatever she wanted, he was going to see to it she had it. And you gotta understand, this man was really in love with his wife. As much as he doted on her, he was probably going to dote on that girl just as much, if not more. She was going to be a daddy's girl. And when the time come, he was going to have a hand in on saying who her new beau was going to be. So all these thoughts run through that man's head. He got big dreams, high hopes, and he hoped that she'd live a long life. Maybe meet somebody like himself, and then they would start their life together and have a child, and their child would have a child, and it would just go on down the line, and the farm would be kept in the family to work from one generation to the next. While he's sitting there holding his child and having these dreams, he's looking into his wife's eyes and can't believe the miracle of life had finally turned into reality. He was so proud of her and that little girl. She had the prettiest little blue eyes, dark curly hair, pretty little baby. Kind of took after her mother. But he could see traces of himself in there. He was hoping she'd grow up to be a fine young lady. So, several days had passed, and every time he'd come in, he'd hurry up and wash his hands and go in there, and whether the baby was asleep or not, he'd get that baby out of that little crib, and he'd hold her, and she'd just coo. Wow, that just drove him crazy. He didn't realize he could be so proud. The mother would tell him, "You can't be waking her up. Just put her down to sleep." He was like, it won't hurt anything. She'll go right back to sleep. Why he couldn't keep his hands off of her. Pick her up and rock her in them arms that had been out there plowing the fields. Them hands was as rough as an old walnut hull. But with her, they was just as gentle as could be. He even thought about a nickname. He loved that little girl with all his worth. He was so proud. Well, the days had passed and the corn started sprouting real good. He come in one day and told his wife, he said, "Corn's going to be real good this year." And he said, "I'm going to go and buy her a brand new crib, a little rocking horse. I know she ain't old enough, but we'll have it when the time comes." So he's watching the little girl grow and watching that corn grow and having a real good time. loses himself out there in the field just thinking about that little girl and the things he's going to buy for her and the talks they're going to have. Just so happens one day he's out working the fields and getting the weeds mowed down, and he looks over his shoulder and sees a fire, big puffs of smoke, getting kind of cool, so he kind of looks at it and thinks, probably just a little bit of smoke coming out the chimney. But the wife that day was making sure there wasn't no chill in the house because she didn't want the baby to get chilled. So she tended to the fire, just have a small fire going in the fireplace. Just so happens that all it took was one spark. Hit her dress and she didn't even know about it. And she's using the poker to poke the logs in the fire and toss a couple more on there. By the time she realized it, the fire had spread up her dress. Now she's panicking. Back in those days, the women wore dresses that went all the way down to their feet. And that dress is on fire now. And it's consuming the dress and starting to consume her. And she started frailing around. Next thing you know, the curtains catch. The rugs catch on fire. Before long, the whole inside of the room was on fire with that little baby in there. And she's trying everything in the world to get that fire out. And the more she tries, the more it takes off through the house. So people's probably wondering how come she ain't doing something about that baby. Well, there ain't no fire exactly where that baby's at, so she's trying to stay away so she don't catch the crib on fire. But the fire consumed her, consumed the room in the house, and by the time the father got back there in a big haste, that it was too late. They was gone. Most of the house was gone. So when the house gets done burning, they're trying to put it out, and there wasn't much to save. The man eventually died of just being worried and grief-stricken. They buried him up in the local cemetery with what they could find of the woman that got consumed by the fire and the baby, and put up a big tombstone for all three. Where they put the tombstone at, there's a big bunch of flowers that always grows that he had planted before he passed away. He didn't live long. So, going to present day, as a kid growing up out in that area, we'd all go past what used to be the old foundation. Well, one day, the landowner decided that foundation was good enough to build on. He was going to build a house there, a rental house for a farmhand. So he gets to sketching, and little does he know, the house that he was going to build there was going to look pretty much like the house that was there before. Just an updated version. He gets her all built, and some people later on that I come to know, they moved into it. They were real good people. They had 3 kids when they moved in there. But the oldest daughter was mentally handicapped, so she stayed home while the other 2 went to school. She couldn't talk real well, but she was a good girl. Got to know her quite well. She was well-respectable little girl. She just had a handicap that she was born with. She couldn't help that. It still didn't change. She was a good little girl. Good heart. I had to learn how to understand her because she didn't talk so good, so a lot of times it was grunts and trying to get words out, but after you was around her for a while, you could get the hint of what she was trying to say. So, in school, come time to sell cookies. So, us kids had to go around the neighborhood trying to sell a box of cookies for the school. So, everybody hit everybody's house, and all the neighbors pitched in and bought cookies, even though they might take a month of Sundays to eat them all. It was just a thing that you done to help the local schools out. It got new basketball, cheerleading outfits, and you name it, for anything for the school, new books, so we could all learn, keep up with the times. Well, that house always had something strange about it. You just never could quite put your finger on it. This family lived there, and as time went by, the little handicapped girl, she would try to explain to her mom that at a certain time, don't be hollering at her because she was playing with the baby. And the mom thought, well, she's got an imaginary friend. Well, maybe that'll keep her out of trouble. Every day, about 12:30, the little girl would go into the back room. She'd play with this little baby and talk to this woman. Well, one day the mom hollered and told her, said, we're having dinner a little bit late. Go wash your fingers and help me set the table. The girl come in there and she proceeded to try to explain that she was having a good time playing with her little friend, and that little friend's mom was a real nice lady. But she didn't like us to be disturbed during tea time. The mom blew it off as an imaginary friend and told her, said, your imaginary friend just going to have to wait till you get done, go in there and wash your fingers. Let's get this table set, because your dad and your uncle be coming in, Grandpa, for supper or dinner, and we won't have nothing ready. They have to wait. Men out there in the field shouldn't have to be waiting, so she thought. So you get in there and wash them fingers, and let's get things ready. They'll be coming up here shortly. So the little girl kind of put up a little bit of a fuss, but she did what Mama told her. She went and washed her fingers, come back, and while she's sitting at the table, she's kind of humming a little song, and her mom gets to listening to it. And she's talking about the little baby and the pretty mom in the other room. So the mom was like, well, I better go check. So she goes and moves the curtain aside by the door and look. She don't see nothing. So she goes back, and after they get done eating, they cleaning up the dinner mess. And she's like, so tell me about this little girl. She said, oh, she's a little baby girl. She fits real nicely in that little crib. She's probably about the size of a shoebox. She's just the cutest little thing. Dark hair, curly hair, prettiest little blue eyes you ever seen. Well, describe the mother. She said, well, the mother's got long, wavy hair, but sometimes she pulls it up in a messy bun on top of her head. But she's still pretty. Mom, you ought to see the dress she wears. It goes from her neck all the way down to her boots. She will describe the boots. Women don't wear boots unless they're out there taking care of the hogs or a rainy day. She goes, no, these here are lace-up boots. They go almost up to the calf of the leg. Real big heels. They just shine. And she goes, well, you sure have studied this woman pretty good. And the little girl, trying to get out the best she could. And it's like, yeah, Mom, she don't look like nothing I've ever seen. Why, that dress is real poofy. You could probably hide $10 or $12 under her dress when she stand up. And it makes a whooshing noise as she walks. And she let me hold that baby and play with it. And she said when it's in its little crib, I get to rock it a little bit. And the mom said, that's okay, you can rock her and talk quietly while she's sleeping while I'm sitting here sewing. Mom's like, well, what's she sewing? Oh, sometimes she's sewing socks, sometimes she's sewing a blanket, sometimes she's even donning a pair of coveralls, bibs, like Grandpa wears. The lady's like, well, I'm glad you have a good time with them. She goes, after supper tonight, she said, can I take some cookies in there and offer them to the mom? The baby's too little, she ain't got no teeth. The mom just kind of laughed. She goes, I guess you're going to want a hot cup of tea to take in there too? And she goes, well, I think that would be nice. I think that lady appreciate that. So the mom plays along. After supper, she puts on a spot of tea and pours a cup. And she goes, well, won't you need a pitcher? So she fills up a tiny little pitcher with a lid on it and put it on a tray and put some cookies on there and told the little girl, she goes, I'll help you to the door, and then you only got about 4 or 5 steps, and there's a little table, just set it on there. So the little girl agreed. The mom carried it to the door, and when she opened the door, the little girl took the tray, and she took her 4 little steps and set the tray down. And the mom watched her through the curtain. The little girl took the little cup of tea and set it down over by this rocking chair. Set some cookies down on a napkin, and then she got her little cup and put some tea in it. Her a couple cookies and a napkin and set them down where she was sitting at, by the crib. So the mom just closed the curtains like, yeah, she got 2 imaginary friends. But that's okay. At least she's having fun with it. So it goes on several months of this little girl doing the same thing. Finally, come time that little girl, they was going to put her in a school for the handicap, so she would be going to school, learning a little bit of a trade, so in case anything happened to mom and dad, she would know how to kind of take care of herself, learn how to count money, and learn how to read and write, just like everybody else, but it would be more geared toward her level of schooling, which was a good thing. Anything can happen at any time. Life's not guaranteed to be long, and sometimes it can be a lot shorter than what you expect. So the little girl was told by her mom one day, said, we're going to have to go get you some school clothes because you're going to have to start going to school. The little girl said, well, what about the baby? How am I supposed to take care of that while the mom's donning socks and stuff? She goes, I'll take care of the mom and the baby. You got to get in and we got to go get you some clothes, get you into school. The little girl kind of didn't like the idea, but she did what the mom was told, so they went and got school clothes and pencils and crayons and all that good stuff that you get to start school with. Why, you even got her a little pack deal she could carry, a little lunch box. And the little girl was set for school. Well, a couple of days before, the little girl was in there in that room and she was talking to somebody, but the mom couldn't see them. And the little girl proceeded to tell the baby not to fret, that she was going to go to school, and as soon as she got out, she'd be in there to visit, providing her mom didn't have any chores for her to do. Then she turned to the mom and was like, I hate to leave, but my mom says I got to go to school. But as soon as I get out of school, you can bet I'll be right back here to help you with that baby so you can get all that sewing done. The mom's watching through the window just kind of laughing, her talking to her imaginary friend. So, day comes, the school bus shows up. The little girl's got her nice little dress on, and she boards the public school bus. Whisk her off to school. Well, on the bus, she started telling people about her friends that lived in her house with her. And it just so happens I was one of the ones riding the bus. This little girl. everybody kind of thought, well, she's a little bit not so smart. They just kind of overlooked it, and some people laughed. The little girl got to where she didn't want to sit by these people, so she ended up back in the seat with me. That was fine. I liked everybody. So I had cousins that were handicapped like that, so it didn't bother me. Wasn't no skin off me. I talked to them. They people too. And the little girl proceeded to open up and tell me. And of course, I'd have problems with ghosts and all kinds of stuff in my life, so it was somebody for me to talk to that wasn't going to judge me neither. And that's how I heard about this story, this little girl. Every time she got on the bus, she had something new to tell me. I didn't laugh at her. That was my friend. So she got to where every time she got on the bus, people would go boo-boo at her and make fun. I told her, you come back here and sit with me. They'll pay attention to them kind of people. But every day she had a new story for me about that little girl and her mom. And I listened. I'm kind of glad I did, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this true story that happened. Well, come day, and it was time for me to quit riding the bus because I was going to be getting out of school. And I told the little girl, I said, you ever have any problems on the bus, you give me a phone call, and I'll see if I can take care of the problem. She was a good girl. I watched her grow up into a fine young lady, despite all the problems she had and all the people that kind of dished on her. She never let that bother her. I kind of watched out for her. We was both growing up. Several years had passed, and I went up there and just to check on the girl, which was now a young lady, and just see how she was doing and let her know I hadn't forgot about her. I went up there one day, and the mom said, are you going to be in the house to talk to her for a little bit? If you are, I got to help my husband in the yard. I said, yeah, that's no problem. So we sitting there talking, and I thought she plumb forgot about the little girl and her mom. Till she spoke up, and she goes, I'm not going to tell you to leave, but if you want to meet my friends, come on and I'll introduce you to them. Well, I went along just to kind of see what was really going on and kind of pacify the girl, play along. Well, she opened that door, and all I seen was what looked like glowing orange in there. And there was that woman holding on to that baby. And the little girl started to walk in there, and I grabbed her. And she goes, no, it's okay. There's always an orange light in here. But all I could see was flames. That young girl walked in there, and the mom stood up and was clutching the baby. And she proceeded to tell the mom, it's all right. He's my friend. He won't hurt you. I just brought him in to introduce you to him. He's been watching over me all these years, make sure nobody pick on me. Well, the orange kind of settled down, and I stepped in there. You could kind of smell what used to be like burnt wood. And the mom settled down over into a chair, and she was sitting there rocking that baby. Well, they looked just as real as me and you. But when she got up to walk, she wasn't walking. She was just kind of gliding across the floor. Well, yeah, I was scared. Scared me to death. But it didn't seem to bother that lady and her baby and the little girl. So I did the best I could to sit there quietly and not say nothing and just pretend like things was normal. Her and the little girl sat down there, and she was talking to the woman and touching the baby's little hand. And they was sitting there talking just like I'm sitting here talking to you right now. And the woman leaned over and asked the little girl my name. The little girl said, well, that's Henry. He lived down the road from me. He's been my protector, and he let me sit with him on the school bus. And she looked over at me and she goes, is this true? Yes, ma'am. I kind of watched out for her, kind of like a little sister. I said, people laugh and poke fun at me sometimes. I wasn't going to let it happen to her, so I asked her to come back and sit with me, and we become good friends. She goes, it always helps to have somebody look out for people, doesn't it? I said, yeah, it does. I said, so ma'am, can I ask you a question? How long have you been in this house? She's the one that told me the story about her and her husband. The little girl told me after the fact, when they moved in, about the woman, but she didn't have quite all the details, so I got all the details from the both of them. And this is the story I'm sitting here telling you right now. Well, several more years have passed, and that family moved away. Another family moved in there. They didn't live there but about 2 weeks, and they moved out. Then another couple moved in, had kids. They lived there maybe 6 months or a year, and just overnight they moved out. There have been people in and out of that house a lot of times. Well, eventually, the guy that my family knew moved in there and was telling us about this new house they moved into. So I got talking to him and finally figured out where it was, and I asked them if they knew the story, if they'd seen the woman and the baby. They're like, you crazy? You're talking about a ghost. I said, yeah, that house is haunted, but not in the way you think. So one night we all went to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, beating at the door. Went and answered the door, and it was the guy that moved in that house that told me I was crazy. He goes, is your dad here? I said, my dad's on the boat, but what you need? He goes, me and my family ain't got no place to sleep. And he said, we seen something a while ago that it defies rationality. I said, well, what'd you see? He goes, that room was on fire. But he said, the dangest thing was there wasn't no heat coming from there, but no smoke. But it was on fire, and there was a woman holding a baby, and we opened up that door. There she stood in flames. I said, well, remember you told me I was crazy? If you'd listened to me, I'd have told you the story. That woman won't hurt you. She was probably trying to make friends with the new family that moved in, which would be you guys. She's not harmful. I've actually talked to her, even though you think I'm crazy. I said, I knew the people that lived there and got introduced to the ghost, talked to the woman, got to see her baby. She interacted. She didn't want nothing. She was never ever trying to bother nobody. But sometimes you might see that. I said, you're going to go back to the house after a couple of days? Come on in and bring your family and make you some pallets on the floor. Kind of a shock. I said, but you get ready to go back up there, I'll go up there with you. I said, the lady knows me. And I said, maybe I can talk to her into not scaring you. I said, she probably had no clue she was scaring you. She was just trying to show you what happened in the house that used to be there, that new house is built on top of that there foundation. So sometimes these ghosts, they ain't trying to scare you. Sometimes that's the only way they know of reaching out. Maybe they're just replaying that certain time. But, every ghost is a different ghost, so just remember some of them can be friendly. Well, he wouldn't have no part of this because he was terrified of ghosts. Even a friendly ghost he didn't have nothing to do with. Well, me and a couple of buddies went up there and gathered up all of his stuff while he stayed out in the driveway, and I said, you sure you don't want to reconsider? She's a real nice ghost. She ain't out to scare nobody or hurt nobody. Nope. No way, he wasn't living there. Well, about 2 years passed, and the landowner decided he was going to move one of his kids in there. So I got wind of it, so I went to the guy's house and I said, tell your son and his new wife that I need to talk to him. I'll tell him about that house. He goes, you just stay away from them. You told one too many ghost stories, and you ain't going to scare my son out of that house. You need to just stay away from there. Fine. Whatever you say. Well, his son and wife moved in there, and they wasn't in there just a few days, and same thing happened to them. They seen that room look like it was on fire, and that woman standing there holding that baby. Well, they run out. They went to his mom and dad's house. Well, there wasn't no talking them out of it. They didn't like me, and, well, that's each his own. I ain't everybody's cup of tea. So, a few days more had passed, and they come when they had big tractors up there and a bulldozer. They pushed a perfectly good house into the basement, lit it on fire. When it got done burned, it wasn't nothing but a pile of rubble. They pushed dirt over it, and now they farm over that. To get rid of the ghost lady? Nah. She still haunts where that foundation used to be. Why, even today you go by there certain nights and you see a big ball of flame, and there's this woman running around. A lot of people don't understand what's going on. I do, because I know the tale. She's trying to put the fire out and protect that baby of hers. She don't want to hurt or scare nobody. She was just a ghost that just didn't want to leave her baby. So, if you like this story, give me a thumbs up, maybe a shout out, subscribe. Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.